Hello everyone, I'm the Saxy Gamer, and today we're here for yet another Civilization VI tips video, where today we are going to be taking a look at the basics of Domination Victory. Let's start off this video by talking about what the actual win condition is for Domination Victory, and thankfully it is a little bit, well, significantly more simple than Culture Victory, and a bit more simple than Science Victory as well, and that's that all you have to do is take the capital cities of all of the other players in the game. So I think it's a bit of a, maybe not entirely common, but slightly common misconception amongst new players that you have to take all of the other players' cities, but that's not true. All that you need is their capitals, and this will play into your strategy whenever we are later in the game, which we'll talk about later on in this video. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the best leaders for Domination Victory, because this is something that's important, especially for your first few times playing a Domination Victory, that you do have a leader that has a lot of bonuses towards winning that victory. So first up here, we're going to talk about Shaka. So Shaka was a leader that was added in Rise and Fall, and some of the things that make him good at Domination Victory are his unique unit, the Impy. He also is able to get cores and armies practically for free whenever you take cities, and this can effectively double your military strength pretty much for free. He also does have loyalty bonuses to help you keep cities, so this can be one of the big challenges of Domination Victory, is making the cities that you capture not flip due to loyalty pressure, and Shaka is somebody who deals with that very well, which I think makes him particularly helpful towards new players. Mathias of Hungary is up next, and he is really good. He's a little bit less friendly towards new players just because you have to effectively be able to levy city-states, which is something that's fairly simple, but being able to levy these city-states, he gets some bonuses towards that, so he gets extra combat strength and movement on levied units, which means that any unit that you have from a city-state is going to be really strong, and in addition to this, you can upgrade them for cheap, which allows you to utilize power spikes, which we will talk about later on in this video. Mathias also does have two pretty good unique units that upgrade into each other, so I don't believe there are any other unique units in the game that you upgrade from one into the other, but you actually do that with Mathias, so this is very good for kind of keeping an extended power spike throughout a large portion of the game. Next we have Bolivar, who was added in the New Frontier Pass, so he is kind of notorious for being one of the strongest leaders in the game, and he's definitely very strong for Domination Victory because he gets a movement bonus on all of his units in the game, so all of your army is able to move a little bit faster. He also does have the Comandante General, which will give +5 combat strength and additional movement to all of your units, which makes them even a little bit more mobile and just stronger as a whole, and it does stack with the Great General bonus as well. His unique unit, the Llanero, is also really strong, easily one of the best unique cavalry units in the game, and something that gives you quite a big power boost later on in the industrial era of the game. Cyrus is practically a base game leader, not quite though, just because he was added in one of those little leader packs, I believe, but Cyrus is good because he has a really good Casus Belli that, well, it's kind of a Casus Belli. It replaces his Surprise War, which Surprise War is often the most, like the easiest way to declare wars, and since he gets a bonus to that, that gives him quite a bit of extra movement and things of that sort, and also reduces the amount of grievances he receives. This really helps you speedily win wars and makes a lot of the other players in the game hate you just a little bit less. He also does have the Immortal, which is one of the best early game unique units because it's both ranged and it has high range strength and high melee strength as well, so very good for taking out both units and cities. Montezuma is a base game leader, and he as well is very strong, so he has the Eagle Warrior, which is a replacement for the Warrior, which is very strong just because it is, obviously the first unit that you get in the game, so right from turn 1, you're able to have an advantage over your opponents, and you're able to take people out very early on, which will help you snowball for pretty much the rest of the game. Montezuma also does have a lot of potential to continually gain combat strength through gaining additional luxury resources, so this kind of allows you to continually get stronger and stronger throughout the game as you go and conquer more cities on more different continents. Suleiman of the Ottomans is the last one we're going to talk about, and he was added in the Gathering Storm expansion, so he has his unique Governor Ibrahim, which will give you combat strength boosts to units that are around the city that he's placed in. He also does have the Janissary, which is a very strong unique unit, and he gets a bonus to siege weapons, which really just makes them tear through both walls and cities, and makes it a lot easier to get your units in there to actually conquer them. There are a lot of additional, very strong leaders for Domination Victory, so some of the ones that come to mind are Genghis Khan and Tomyris, and there's just a number of them besides that. There are a lot of good Domination leaders in the game, but these are just some of the best that I wanted to call your attention to, so if you are a new player, I would highly recommend starting with one of these leaders when you go for your first Domination Victory. Let's now go ahead and talk about some tips to help you get to this end goal of taking all of the other players' capitals in a game. So, starting from turn 1, the thing with Domination Victory that I've kind of alluded to before is that early aggression is something that's very important, because with a Domination Victory, it's kind of like a snowball effect that the earlier and earlier you get more power, then the faster and faster you will continue to just steamroll your opponents in the future. So, I have an entire video dedicated to early war that I suggest that you check out if you're interested in something like that, but just doing early aggression is very strong because it allows you to, 1, knock out another player, so they're not going to be a threat later on, and 2, it gives you a lot more land and space to expand and build up your military to go and then attack the next nearest neighbor. This is honestly probably the single most important thing for Domination Victory, especially when you're playing on higher difficulties, because in higher difficulties, the longer and longer you wait to beat up on one of the AI, just the stronger and stronger they're going to get. So being able to take out somebody early to kind of give you a lot more resources than what some of the other players may have available is something that's very crucial towards making the rest of your domination game a lot easier. If you're struggling with loyalty pressure, the thing to make sure of here is that 1, you have a governor in the city that you're having the loyalty issues in, and 2, another thing that can be helpful is to have Victor with the Garrison Commander promotion in a nearby city. So Garrison Commander will give loyalty to cities that are in a certain number of tiles from the city that Victor is placed in, and this can just make it very easy if you put him towards your front lines to get that extra 4 loyalty per turn on any new cities that you take, which can make this a little bit easier. The other thing to remember here is that population is pretty much king when it comes to loyalty, so you might want to consider switching some of your cities to population focus or food focus in order to make them grow faster to help stabilize loyalty in cities that you're taking. Just like with early war, I do have an entire video on loyalty. This one is a little bit longer, but I will link it below as well if you are interested in learning more about loyalty. As you get later on into the game, this is where things get a lot of the times a little bit tougher for Domination Victory, just because some other players may have a lot more science per turn than you, which means they'll have more advanced units and things like that. So as you go on later in the game, the thing to do is just continually attack the nearest and weakest neighbor that you possibly can. So I think a lot of players get stuck in the trap of they see someone as a threat, so they try to fight them, maybe someone that is a little bit more advanced than them, has a little bit of a bigger military, and they try to fight that player, and then a lot of the time what happens is you get stuck in a stalemate, and then all of the other players will continue to get stronger and stronger while you kind of stagnate because you're pouring all your resources in to trying to attack a strong neighbor, when really you should just take out the weak neighbors, gain more resources, and then by that time you'll probably be able to overcome any other, like whatever the stronger neighbors previously were. Another thing that plays a very big role in the later eras of the game, like the mid and late eras of the game, is utilizing power spikes. So if you're unfamiliar with what a power spike is, it's pretty much any particular point in time where you are going to gain a significant advantage over whoever else you're fighting against. So the easiest example of a power spike to explain will be a unit upgrade. So say you and your neighbor are fighting both with swordsmen, but then you rush the tech to get musketmen. So a swordsman has 36 combat strength and a musketman has 55, so on all the units that you upgrade, you now have a 19 combat strength advantage, which means you're just going to demolish your opponent's swordsman. Not all power spikes are quite as clear-cut. Another good example would be either a unique unit that you're able to get, or maybe a policy card that will really help you in producing more units or things of that sort. So be looking out for power spikes, especially as I mentioned through the mid and later eras of the game. And the other thing that you want to make sure that you do is the second that you get that tech or civic that unlocks your power spike, you want to immediately start making use of it, because the longer and longer you wait, the closer and closer that your opponent also gets towards researching that tech or civic and then nullifying your power spike. So this is easily one of the most important things, especially when you're playing on higher difficulties, in order to having a successful domination game. Another question that I get asked kind of frequently is, should I be keeping all the cities that I take? Should I try to totally wipe out my neighbors? Or, should I just beeline straight for capitals? And my answer to this is that it depends on what era of the game you're in. When you're fairly early on in the game, you should definitely be keeping pretty much all the cities that you take unless they're really badly settled, in which case you should just raise them or not take them at all. But early on, as I mentioned before, it's important to get a lot of cities to start your snowball effect towards, because, you know, more cities means more locations to produce units, more locations to produce yields, and it'll make you stronger as a whole. As you get later on into the game, a lot of the times it takes more resources to take an individual city because you have to deal with things like walls, or maybe your opponents have bigger armies, so it's not very feasible to go and take every single city of every opponent that you're going to be fighting in the game. In those cases, it's a lot easier just to beeline effectively straight for the capital, and also maybe take some of the more some of the more well-built up cities along the way that might be valuable for giving you a lot of yields or just general power, or for helping you stabilize loyalty around the capital. The other thing is that later on in the game, you gain a lot of tools that make it a lot easier to kind of just snipe single cities, like sniping capitals. So you gain things like aircraft or units with a lot of movement, or, you know, GDRs or nukes or things like that that really allow you to just target one single city and then take it. So later on in the game, that's especially whenever I think it's very appropriate to just go and snipe single capitals, take the capital city and maybe one or two surrounding cities, so that way you don't have loyalty issues, and then just move on to the next player, take their capital, one or two surrounding cities, and repeat pretty much until you've won the game. So those have been some tips towards the basics of Domination Victory. There still is obviously a lot of nuanced little things that you can always be improving throughout your Domination game, but I didn't want to go into too much detail in this video because this is intended to be just, you know, a nice little basic thing for beginners who maybe are new to the game and haven't had much experience with Domination Victory. If you're looking for the TLDR for Domination Victory here, it's pretty much as follows. Early on in the game, you want to make sure that you are immediately making use of early aggression, so you're attacking your nearest neighbor generally under turn 30. You want to start warring your nearest neighbor, taking their cities and keeping them as well. So this is going to ensure that you start your snowball, because more cities allows you to build more units and get more districts for things like more science. That will allow you to make use of power spikes, which we talked about. Power spikes are things such as unique units or unit upgrades that will give you a significant edge over your opponents. So throughout the mid and later eras of the game, you want to be looking for these power spikes, and the second that you hit one, you should use that as an opportunity to attack the next closest and weakest neighbor. The worst thing that you can do is try to go at war with someone that is significantly stronger than you in either science or just raw military strength, because if you end up at a stalemate, you're going to be continually pouring in resources to a war while gaining virtually nothing, while all the other players in the game will continue to build up their strength, thus making all future wars harder as well. Later on in the game, all that you have to do is pretty much snipe capitals and maybe take one or two surrounding cities, so that way you have stabilized the loyalty, and then with those, with all of those things, you should be on your way to a Domination Victory. So thank you everyone for watching. I have been the Saxy Gamer. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you're looking for some more Civilization 6 content, feel free to subscribe. If you have any further questions, feel free to post them in the comments section below. But thank you for watching, and goodbye.